welcome back to Tap Tempo with me, Matt Lange. I've pretty much been holed up in the house for the past few weeks. I'm trying to actually finish up a little piano-based EP, and that's been totally consuming everything I've been doing, but it's been a lot of fun. And let's talk about a couple shows coming up. On January 19th, I'm in Washington, D.C. at 10 Tigers, and then the next night on Saturday the 20th, I'm down in Atlanta, and I'm playing at the Music Room. And then on January 28th, if you're at NAMM, we're going to be doing a Tap Tempo Roundtable live. And we will be recording it, so it'll ultimately later end up on the podcast itself. But if you happen to be at NAMM, come check it out. Should be at about 1:30 p.m. And it'll be on the Avid main stage, wherever that is at NAMM, but it's a big Avid stage, and it's pretty hard to miss. This week on the show, I've got Oumi Kapila, who I've known for a few years through the trailer music world, but he's just a fucking killer musician. He's toured the world with bands such as Filter, Combichrist, and these days he spends most of his time as a composer. So he came down, we had some beers, did the thing, and then we had a lot more beers later, which, to be honest, I'm still actually hurting a bit from. But it's a really good chat. It's always fun to hang with Oumi.
As artists, at the time of the experience of grief or heartbreak, which is, I'm sure it was, I don't know, it was probably a difficult time, I'm assuming.
Sure.
From personal experience, I think at the time, it's very tragic and it hurts and you would do anything to not feel it. But in hindsight, fast forward, could be a year or 2 years or maybe 3 years in my case, you almost look back on those experiences and become grateful for the fact that you went through it, because it inevitably does inspire a lot of art.
Yeah.
And concepts and things that you may not have otherwise come across. And I hate to say it, but grief, it's a great muse.
It's like the only way out is through. You know?
The only way out is through, exactly.
And it sucks at times, but the gift that you're given.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it, isn't it? The gift.
It doesn't feel like a gift at the time, but later, after you've written half an album just off of one experience, how many experiences, but how many relationships in general will give you that inspiration, that kick, that suddenly you can't stop writing. It's so rare. It's precious.
That's deep, man.
Yeah. So like,
well, cheers.
Just make us hurt more. It's terrible.
So it's good to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you're here. I always wanted to ask you this. I was thinking about this earlier, because you obviously are a very gifted guitar player. You're on a desert island. You got one guitar left. What do you pick?
Telly.
Telly?
My one Telly. It's the same Telly I've used since, I believe, around about 2004.
Yeah.
I remember working a job and I got a bonus check, and I was really into this guitar player, Richie Kotzen, at the time.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sure, right. Yeah. And all he played was Tellys. And I thought, well, if he plays Tellys, I'm going to get a fucking Telly. Because up until then, I was strictly a Ibanez Gem sort of guy. I came up from the whole... Yeah, I still have them. In fact, I have one...
Oh, I think I've seen one of them on your wall.
There's a floral one on the wall, and there's one tucked away, which we converted into a fretless. So ripped all the frets out.
That's cool.
Probably one of the only Ibanez Gem fretlesses that are around. But anyway, I decided I wanted to get a Telly, and went to all the big music stores in Perth and probably tried out about 30 or 40 of them, and the first one I tried is the one that I went back to, and it's still my main guitar today.
American
Deluxe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
With the S1 switching, and has a Damasio DiMarzio fast track, and the Hot rails.
Hot rail in the bridge.
Seymour Duncan's. No, I kept the bridge standard, and I like the twang that you get out of it.
Yeah.
And the fast tracks just have a really nice mid, really nice crunch. The way they squeal, it's kind of just something that's old and comfortable, and you know how it reacts to your hand and your playing, and that would be my desert island guitar.
When you're on the road with like Filter or Combichrist, can you get away with a telly?
I can, and I have. I mean, sometimes you take it off and you swing it at the drum kit, and
sure,
you know, and you break the kit with it, and it still works.
Yeah,
you know, you have your tech look at it the next day. It's all clear, and I still use it to record all the time.
Yeah,
there's solid guitars.
Right
you know?
on. I got a Strat finally, like a real Strat,
right,
in the past 6 months.
You got to have one.
Yeah, I mean, my first guitar ever was a Japanese Strat copy.
From which era?
Oh, I don't. This was probably 1998, 99.
Okay.
It was called an Aria Pro 2.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with them, but some of the older, the ones in the 80s, even the Squires back then were really good.
Really?
Really excellent guitars, the Japanese ones.
Yeah.
Well made.
I mean, the best Ibanez guitars are Japanese. Look at it.
I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I'm impressed because then for a while, like the Korean guitars, they were kind of the cheap imports, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I've got a couple of the PRS SE Korean-made guitars, which they're manufactured by like World Musical Instrument under the PRS trademark or something.
How do you find those?
Unbelievable.
Really?
Really good.
Wow.
To be honest, my favorite guitar in general, at least favorite electric guitar, is this PRS SE 24, or it's a custom 24/7 string. Mm-hmm. And it just feels great.
Is that the one on you record with that, or? I
record a lot with it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have a Les Paul in there too, and sometimes just if I want like a six string, I'll just tune that down to drop C basically and
get the balls.
No, it's vocally for a reason.
Oh.
Yeah, because my voice sits better like C minor I feel really confident at.
Okay.
And D minor is like, that's about as high as I can go.
Okay.
So I need kind of C. That actually is where like my voice is happy.
Yeah, that's kind of a good range for trailer keys as well. There's a lot of C because of the low. I find anyway. I think it's also something to do with your contrabass.
Sure.
The range of it and where it can go to. Yeah. I might be wrong.
Well, cellos are tuned to C also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I should know that.
The low string on a cello is a C. I mean, and that's tuned in fifths.
Ah, right. So it'd be the same for a bass, just an octave low.
Yeah, so C, G, D, A, basically. And I think a bass, I guess a contrabass, is that an octave lower than a cello? Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah.
As far as I know.
Right. But now you've got contact, so you could take anything, you know, transpose it wherever you want it to go, basically.
Yeah, it's that's a sign of the times and the generation of composer that we're in. You know, you can be doing stuff and you can make music that people are still enjoying and still gets placed in trailers and not know exactly what the range of the instrument that you're writing for is because it's all in the sample library.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a negative. You know, there's a lot of people would probably get really snobbish about it and say, well, you're not a real musician, you don't know your shit and whatnot.
Well, no, I would say you're just not a proper arranger.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, well, I think there's a couple of points on that. The main one being whatever's in your sample library does not necessarily translate to how it's going to sound live. So if you're writing for an orchestra or a string quartet or whatever, of course, you've got to, you know, if you don't know your stuff 100% like myself, you pull out your Principles of Orchestration by Rimsky-Korsakov, check out the ranges and make sure that you're not doing anything untowards. And, you have to know about certain things like what does a melody sound like if you play it on the G string as opposed to not specifying, and where's the harmonics and
you
how
lose
do you
that
sol ponticello. And you lose all that. But in a way, oftentimes, what it's like. You get a brief and it's you don't have the budget to go and record a string quartet or hire real players.
Not.
So you've got to play to whatever the samples give you. And there's some really, really great sample libraries out there. I have my favorites, some of my go-tos, obviously.
What are you liking right now?
What I'm liking right now is what I've liked for the last 3 years while I've been here. And it's, I know it so well, which is why I go to it, but it's generally LA scoring strings.
Yeah. Just regular?
If I know I want to go for a big production, the trailer we did for Rogue One.
Yeah.
This is a great example. There was a lot of layering with that, and also the Hollywood strings from East West.
Yeah, no kidding.
They have just a very big, grandiose kind of sound, but not necessarily by themselves. When you combine them, you get a lot of different textures and tones, and that's what gives it the thickness and power.
I've always done it similarly. I don't use the Hollywood East-West strings just because I really have a hard time with the East-West GUI.
Well, I think play is very fiddly.
I like contact,
Contact's great. It's very easy. It's quick.
But I've done what you've done with, I'll use, because I love how sharp the staccatos and the shorts are with LA scoring strings. They're much more precise. But then...
albeit smaller sounding.
Yeah. But for kind of having like the attack or the transient of a string sound, they're so good to layer in on top of like a lusher, more patty kind of thing. And then for that, I've always liked the Adagio stuff.
Adagio?
Adagietto is like the big pad one, so I'll use it for that.
Yes. I use the Agitato from them sometimes, which has a really nice, strong, again, totally different character.
It's very produced sounding.
It is. In fact, there's a filter track, now that I'm thinking of it, that we used the violins from Agitato on there's a song called Welcome to the Suck.
That's funny. Is it out?
It's out. It was on Crazy Eyes.
Okay.
And in the last the last chorus, it's the samples from Agitato that are playing the violin line. And they're distorted. I probably use Decapitator. I use Decapitator on everything.
Yeah. Do you have any outboard distortion?
No. Let me think.
Which is kind of funny since you're a guitar player.
I have no outboard distortion. I've always been a fan of... I tell a lie. I used to use a DS1 until it got covered with beer and or water, and it died, and I never bought one again, even though they're $30. But I then decided to try the Tube Screamer, which everyone raves about, which are very, very, very good.
Yeah.
However, I'm with Bogner now, and they just made the best shit ever.
Are you using the Ecstasy or what?
In Europe, when we toured around Europe, I used the Ecstasy. For America, I used an Uberschall.
How do you like that?
You're going to put me on the spot. I've forgotten the name of the model, but there's two Uberschalls, and this one was the one with the white face. It wasn't the...
You know more. I just know... I've never played through one. I know.
I should know this as a Bogner artist. I'm terrible with gear and names and all that kind of stuff, which you're going to find out very soon.
Perfect.
But it pairs with they made a cab especially for this particular Uberschall, which really had a lovely capture of very, very low end. I guess it's designed for 7 strings and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I remember when the Uberschall came out, it was kind of like their answer to a Mesa rectifier.
Right. Yeah. A very, very differently dressed answer.
Different voice, but it was their modern high game amp.
It was, yeah. And I mean, I just think, I love Reinhold. You know, he's a great guy, and he's become a friend.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, I mean, since I was about 18 and I was playing in clubs and whatever in Perth, I would go to this music store called Music Park, and they had one Bogner there, and just the head alone, I think, was $8,000 or $9,000. It was so ridiculously out of range. And
was that just because of the import tax to Australia?
I'm not sure. You know, it was always like the high-rise Ferrari kind of sparkly. Wow, nobody in town played a Bogner that I knew anyway,
right?
Because nobody could fucking afford one.
Sure.
And at the time, there was I think it's 1995, there was a G3 DVD where Vi was playing Out of an Ecstasy. And you remember the one?
I remember that era.
Yeah. Mike Keneally, Philip Bino, and I think Mike Mangini was on drums. It was just such a great, great, great band. So I remember seeing it. I watched that DVD 100 times and would always see the Ecstasy on there. I thought, I'd love to play out of one of them. And actually met Reinhold here by chance.
No kidding.
Over at the Bogner factory, and they were really supportive and happy to jump on board with the whole Filter stuff. And it's funny because I played out of a very old early 90s dual rectifier for years and years and years back in Perth. And on the same day that I decided to go with Bogner, Mesa Boogie hit me up as well over email and said, whatever you need, we're here to help. And it was an interesting paradox.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just that exact same day of shit. What am I going to do? I love both of these, but I had to go with the Bogner stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a little fantasy.
I understand that. My fantasy's Mesa, so you got to do it.
I mean, I have a Mesa too. I have one of the old Tremor Verb combos, which I use for a lot of recording, and it's got a lot of balls.
Yeah.
And that's my other favorite amp, you know.
I've got a single rec back there.
Oh, the 50 watt?
Yeah, it's 50 watt, yeah.
They're great.
I bought it back in high school. I saved up lunch money for 2 years. You know?
They're pretty cheap now.
I got it on eBay, I think, for $700.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
What did you put in there? Did you keep the 6L6s?
No, I have EL34s in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like EL34s in general. I like the more woolly mid-range. Mm-hmm. 6L6s, even though I've always kind of like 6L6 amps, I need that Marshall-y kind of growl.
Right.
You know? It's
Yeah, they're a little more bitey, I guess.
I love mid-range. That's really a big...
Higher mid.
Yeah, or just mids in general, but like that 1K spike you got on an amp. Mm-hmm. It's funny,
you can almost taste it.
You can, and it's kind of the same reason, I kind of romanticize 5150s until I play them.
Right.
And then I don't love them that much.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes the recorded tones you get out of them are so thick.
Yeah. I mean, I think Devin Townsend uses them a lot, doesn't he?
He was for a while. He's actually all over the Fractal now, the Axe Effects.
Oh, right.
Which
so is everyone.
They're so good. They're that thing changed how I recorded guitar.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've had it for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I love all of my guitar tones are 99% of them are the Fractal.
Right.
And then there have been times where I've mixed in the rectifier on top of it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a particularly good guitar recording engineer as far as, mic placement and
oh man, I don't know if there's any rules, you just throw it up, right?
Well, that's what you think, you throw a 57, by the cone it's going to sound good. No.
You just gotta, you just have to drink beer.
Right, of course.
I mean, right, the more you drink, the better it's going to sound.
Yeah, until the next day. I think. That's the problem.
No, getting back to 5150s, there was there's actually, I'm not sure if you've heard of them, it's a band from Perth called Carnival.
Yeah, I've heard of them, yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember when they were just kind of starting to break out, and I was teaching guitar. I think I was about 19 or 20 back in Perth, and every third student that would come in would, I want to learn this Carnival song, and like, who the hell are these guys? And one of my students bought me a CD. He's like, I'm just going to give you this, listen to it. I thought, okay, I'll check it out. And it was this album called Themata, which was their breakout album. Okay. And it was so good. And I think it's still, it's probably still one of my favorite rock / progressive metal albums. For lack of a better word, I hate to genreify it, but all of those tones were 5150.
Really?
And that's what kind of, I remember talking to Drew, the guitar player out of Carnival, and that's what he was tracking with at the time, I believe. So I feel that that's a really good representation of that kind of sound.
For me, there's this, I don't know if they're still going, but there's a band they're actually out of North Carolina, I think Charlotte, called Daylight Dies. And they're, you know them, or you know of them? I see the face, or you're making a face.
I have a face.
Okay. No, because when I first heard it sounded like they were like a British doom metal band from like late 90s or something like that. But they had this album that came out in I think like 2004 or 2005. I got way into it when I was at Berkeley, called Dismantling Devotion. And the guitar tone on it is so crushing.
Wow.
And it's like the production on the album's beautiful. Everything is really heavily multi-tracked. There's a lot of actually like really nice vocal work. It's not just screams. It's like really nice, clean singing.
Nice.
And mixed in with these really heavy guitar tones and like giant drums. I mean, it's one of the best recorded metal albums. Like I reference that when I want to think of like a huge metal tone.
Right.
And because it's slower tempos, you know, you can really feel the space and like the weight of it all. But yeah, that's all 5150. As far as I know, and I've never been able to get a sound like that out of
Secret sauce.
Yeah.
So do you have one?
Not a 51. I mean, well, fortunately in the Axe Effects, I have like 300 amps, which are all pretty convincing, you know?
Right.
I've gotten better recorded rectifier tones out of the Fractal than I have out of my actual rectifier.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a whole, I wouldn't say can of worms, because that implies a negative connotation, but I think that's the whole philosophy that an era that we're in right now is. I think the purists are fading, and you know, but people that were kind of anal about it has to be this, and it's not. It's DI. It's direct. I mean, Richard
Sculptor,
Richard Patrick. He's the first guy that really sort of. Kind of really put me onto that and made me realize that it doesn't matter what you use. Short Bus, I think it is definitely one of the greatest industrial records ever, and everything was direct. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
It was back in 95. I think that there was one drum machine and, you know, a DI bass and a DI guitar, and off you go. And it's not about the last 2% of how are you going to mic the fucking guitar and what preamp you use. It's about the song, and it's about the composition and the intent and the viscerality behind it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I was just watching a really great mixing. I think it was at AES back in AES in New York. Is that the one? Chad Blake. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Sure.
He's currently probably my favorite mixer,
Really? Okay.
which is interesting because the genre of music he mixes is usually not my sort of go-to, although I still highly enjoy what he does. But his work on what has he done? Arctic Monkeys, Black Keys, Last Shadow Puppets. Some of those were referenced to me for some productions I was doing, and I was just really blown away by the tones and the aggressiveness and the uniqueness of the way he did it. So I started checking out everything. I think I've watched every interview with him that's that's public on YouTube and whatnot. But one of the things he was doing in his Q&A was very much. I think he was very honest about his approach and questions. You know, people would be like, "Well, what should I use on a kick drum? And what should I use on a hi-hat? And what do you do in this?" And his answers are I think they're just the same as any of us do. Well, on this, I would use a Sans amp. On the snare, I would use a Sans amp. And on the hi-hat, I'm going to use a Sans amp. And it's the plugin from Avid. It's nothing special.
It's the super old Sans amp plugin.
Super old, and
that's funny.
And he uses it, and I hope someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but he uses it also more as a really diverse EQ, because I mean, Sans amp is so versatile. You can get so many varied tones out of it. You know, right. There's not one sound out of a Sans amp. I think another thing that he brought up in his Q&A that I learned. Well, I mean, I think this has been my philosophy by default, because I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy all the greatest analog gear in the world. Sure. I have some that I really love, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute.
Yeah.
But you know, he the same as I think Neil Laveron's another guy that went this way. How much outboard gear do you use? Almost none. Why? Well, the plugins are okay. They don't emulate exactly what your hardware is going to do, but who cares? Does it sound good? Yes.
I think it's important to differentiate. You're quoting mix engineers, and you do more than just mix.
Well, I think it's what.
Because I agree when it comes to mixing.
I mean, mixing's probably the last thing that on my resume that I would do professionally.
Yeah.
By necessity, I mix all my own stuff, of course, and sometimes for other people if they ask. But I mean, this gets back to tracking. This gets back to production, because a lot of the things that you want to give your mix engineer, especially these days, you've shaped the sound almost exactly how you want it. Yeah. Well, I tend to, you know, you've especially distortion plugins, I think you can't really expect someone to know what you're hearing. And I found this out the hard way. When I took everything off and thought, well, here's what I came up with. This guy's going to... No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't matter how great the mix engineer is, if they're fucking Grammy nominated.
If it's integral to the sound, you have to print it.
You have to print it. And not only do you have to print it, before you get to that stage, you have to really think about, how do I want this to sound?
Yeah.
Because you give it to anyone else to mix, and I've been fortunate to work with some really great mixing engineers, mastering engineers too. This applies in that same world.
Sure.
And, you know, they've all got great credits, and some of them have, you know, done Grammys, and they've mixed Deftones albums and on all this kind of shit. And then all of a sudden you get it back and you're thinking, well, hang on, let's try this. Let's try another pass. Let's try the pass. And case study, I've gotten to pass number 9 and it's still not there.
Really?
And but I think that's very subjective as well, in the fact that I'm saying it's still not there. It's not my aesthetic, but if you're going to give your record to mix to some, or a track or whatever, for someone else to mix, you have to appreciate that they're going to bring a different set of ears and a different set of musical listening and life philosophies to whatever the product's going to be.
Sure.
So I think people that aren't experienced are under this assumption that I'm going to give it to a great mix engineer and it's automatically going to be the best thing in the world. That is absolutely not the case. It's oftentimes it's to do with the song and whatever you give them in the first place, and the stuff that you've heard that you love from these guys. Yes, they're great mix engineers. It was probably recorded really well. It was arranged really well. There was great production behind it.
Sure. And
not saying that your stuff that you give a great mixing engineer isn't going to have those things, but it may not turn out the way that you want it. So the moral of the story, if there is one, as much as you can, do it yourself and get it as close as you possibly can to the way that you want it to sound. And it's really, I wouldn't say it's easy to do that, but all the resources are there for all of us to do that. I don't know what the number is. There's probably 500,000 YouTube videos out there that are covering.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
there's no shortness of education or knowledge.
I could pull up anything, and it could be just some kid in a bedroom, and he's probably going to come up with some cool idea that I didn't think of that I would love to try. Totally. I think it's it pays to be. I think Dave Pensado is a really great proponent of that school of thought. Of you've heard him a million times in his videos where he's kind of saying, "Hey, in your comments, let me know what you're doing because I love to check out what you guys are doing and I learn from you."
Yep.
And who doesn't love Dave anyway, just for everything that he is and everything that he's doing.
Everything he does is amazing. Yeah.
What a beautiful, humble approach. That there's no, he's done so much stuff and he's not sitting there on a pedestal. And
no, it's not a big ego play or anything like that.
And it's
very humble.
It's so refreshing because there is a lot of ego play, and there is, I'm not going to name any names, but there's definitely a lot of characters that have got that attitude of, well, I'm this guy and I've done this fucking project and I'm going to talk down to you. But it's not necessary. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's got something to offer. Everyone's got some cool idea to bring to the table. There's no reason to act like that.
Yep.
I met Dave a few times. I think he's a wonderful guy and just a great human, as well as such a beautiful educational resource and gift to the entire community of mixing. And this sounds like a Dave Pensado.
Well, it's just funny timing because last week Chongor was here, so it's just perfect timing. But,
I'm using that as an example, and also what you're doing. I think this is great. You've had, I don't know how many people on your show, and there's all sorts of characters, from composers to mixers to producers of music and producers of shows, and everyone's got something great to offer in terms of their experience. And
I think you're the first rock star, which is cool. I wanted some of those. I needed that. I haven't been able to have the Amp Bogner chat yet. That. That's fun for me.
Well, I'm glad I could help. I'm not sure what that term really means anymore, but
it's silly. It's totally set in jest.
You're a rock star. I'm sitting across. You know what I mean?
Oh, don't. I don't tour like you tour. I've never toured Europe with big bands like you have or anything like that.
So here's a big secret. So touring, it's awesome. I think this is more of a philosophical discussion and point of view. And, I've been really into philosophy lately, as I was mentioning to you over a beer earlier.
Yeah.
But, so let's look at it. If I rewind my life back,
go back 4 years,
not even 4 years. I'm going to go back to when I was 18. So
how old are you now?
I'm 33 now.
Okay, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're going back a while. Yeah.
I remember this day specifically. I went down to there's a festival in Perth called Rocket, which they have every year, and I'm not sure if they do anymore. Probably not. But at this particular year, there was, it was the era of Simple Plan and Grinspoon were there. I don't know if you know.
No, but I know it was so it's 15 years ago, so it's 2003.
So
yeah, okay, I know.
Welcome to My Life and all that stuff.
Right.
By the way, Grinspoon, if anyone heard of Grinspoon, fucking killer Australian band that should be checked out. I remember Grinspoon, I think they were just a trio at the time. But I remember seeing Green Day, and who doesn't like Green Day? They're fun. They've got, especially the older stuff, Basket Case and Longview and all
so
this.
Good, yeah.
I think it's just it's like pizza. You could put it on and you're not going to not enjoy it.
Yeah.
It might not be your favorite record, but it's just a good thing to have around. It's good vibes. It reminds you of easier, simpler times when you would skateboard and just, get drunk, go to parties, meet girls. For me, it's that kind of era.
I still skateboard. So.
Well, I can see there's eight skateboards on.
But I don't go to parties. I don't meet girls at parties anymore, unfortunately. But I understand the sentiment.
Well, I think the philosophy behind it is I remember being there, and I remember who I was with. I was with my friend Emma and this girl Leah, and we're still friends, by the way. And I was watching Green Day, and first of all, Billy Joe's got to be one of the greatest frontmen, showman, charismatic, just everything. He's just got whatever that it factor is. And I went into that show as I don't mind Green Day. And, halfway through, I was a bigger fan as anyone else. It was just so infectious, and it was just so overwhelmingly fun.
Right.
I couldn't deny it. You know what I mean? And they did the whole thing where they get a kid up from the crowd, and he plays a song, and then they give him the guitar, and it was just so much fun. And
they gave him a guitar.
They gave him I remember exactly what he said. I think it was Longview or whatever. He played a few chords, and at the end he's like, "So the best part about this is you get to keep the guitar." And of course everyone's erupts, and it was probably a shitty Squire or whatever.
It doesn't matter. That changes that kid's life.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it changed everyone's life at that moment in time, because it was just this incredible connectedness and togetherness in that moment that everyone was just so excited for what had just happened. He's a kid that ate breakfast and left to go to a rock concert in the morning, and now he's on stage with fucking Green Day, and then they give him the guitar to take home. You know what I mean?
It's amazing.
What a story.
It's like, it's all downhill from there. He's fucked.
He's fucked, yeah. Just ruined the fucking poor kid's life. But I remember that was a defining day, because I was watching that, and I'm like, I was playing clubs and whatnot at the time, and the band I was playing with was doing great things, but it was just a very Perth thing, and we were earning great money. I was 18-year-old kid, and I was making $300 or $400 a show. I was very happy with that at the time. But I remember seeing that concert. I'm like, I'm going to fucking do that. I'm going to be on that fucking stage at the festival, and I'm going to play in front of, 15,000 people or whatever the fuck it was. And,
Right.
And then I did.
Yeah?
And
what band was that part of?
Filter.
Yeah.
That was part of, I toured, and during the process of the first tour, before and after, we were working on Crazy Eyes, which is the latest record.
Okay.
And then we toured Crazy Eyes around America and Europe, and subsequently did play a lot of festivals similar to that, Carolina Rebellion and Welcome to Rockville. I can't remember the names of all of them.
You ever do Wacken?
Combichrist did Wacken, I think.
Cool.
Is that how you say it?
I believe so.
It's not Wacken.
Well, it looks like Wacken, but I believe the proper pronunciation, and I could be
Wacken.
I believe it's Wacken.
Yeah, that's a very Combichrist-esque festival.
Yeah, I suppose.
I think that's pretty huge as well.
It's the biggest metal festival in the world, from what I understand.
Yeah, what is it, like 50,000, 80,000 people?
It's insane.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah, some of my boys in Combichrist have got photos that I've seen. Mm-hmm. But just getting back to the whole, okay, yeah, I mean, I want to put this into the right words. I saw an interview with Jim Carrey, who's a guy that I really admire from many, many different facets of his personality. And
sure.
I think in the last few years, one of my most influential things that I'd seen was his commencement speech.
I thought you were going to say that.
Right.
Yeah.
For the university in Santa Barbara, right?
Yeah.
I think it was an Ayurveda school for holistic medicine or something. Whatever the profession that he was speaking to is completely irrelevant to the things that he was saying.
Indeed.
And I remember seeing that, and I was out here. I just moved here in 2014. I was at a very, very low point. Speaking of breakups, I'd gone through a very tragic, very debilitating set of circumstances.
Yeah.
And I saw the speech, the whole 25 minutes of it, and it was October of 2014. I remember this, and it sat with me. And then I watched it again and again and again and again, and the words were just, they were healing in a way and inspiring, and probably not really much more than that. I'm not going to...
Well, probably reassuring also.
Reassuring. You know, I don't want to put it on any kind of pedestal.
Well, I think it's important to hear because, I mean, you hear so many speeches in a way, especially commencement, high school, college speeches that, you know, go
Right.
on, be great. You have all this power from this. That's bullshit. You know, and
I'm sure you had one at Berkeley, right?
No,
didn't have one?
I was already working by the time the official graduation happened.
Right.
Like I fulfilled all my credits and I moved. I got a job and I split. So
Right.
I didn't walk. I didn't do the official graduation ceremony because I was already doing a job.
Oh, well, I mean, that's great. I think that's the point, right?
I guess so. You know, I did graduate technically, but the way I got around that is when I entered my major, I tested out of a few credits, some of like the basic music theory things. And so I skipped. I skipped basically half a year, and by doing that, and then doing a small summer semester, I finished actually the entire program in the December of 2007, and the rest of my class graduated in the spring of 2008. I was already living in Washington, D.C., working with BT back then. So
Right.
that was just the timing of it. I'm not sad about it. I never need to do another graduation.
You don't look sad about it.
No, not at all.
I think you've done all right, Matt.
I'm doing okay. You know, there's always room for improvement. I'd like to own my house.
That's going to be 2019.
No.
Oh, Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, right. What? Do you have a present saved for me?
I'll give it to you later.
No. Don't tempt me.
Anyway, look, I had a moral for this story, and I want to get to it because I think it's important, especially for anyone that's kind of really honing at their craft and has a future set of goals that they might be focusing on. You know, okay, so between the festival when I was 18 back in Perth to fast forward, you're in LA and you're touring the world and you're playing all these festivals and you're playing with your favorite bands, and not only that, fucking you finish a show in Dallas and Vinnie Paul from Pantera comes up and tells you how much he enjoys your guitar playing and whatnot, and would you like to come back to his house for a barbecue, and which all this really happened. It was crazy. It was obviously Dimebag's a huge influence to me and should be to anybody that plays rock guitar since he's been around.
Sure. And
yeah, we did all that, and it was you know, it's all these things that you that's one experience I could. You know, I'm not going to sit here for 10 minutes and go down a list, but there's all these things that you end up doing that you only ever dreamt about when you were a kid. And, you know, I'll give you just one other funny example. I was playing at a festival in, I can't even remember what fucking city, but as I got off, there was a guitar player from 3 Doors Down, and you know, he's standing on the side of the stage, he's like, "Hey man, really enjoyed your guitar playing." Chet is his name, really lovely, sweet guy.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, thanks, man. Are you guys playing?" He's like, "Yeah, we're headlining. We're 3 Doors Down." I'm like, "Oh, dude, this is hilarious because growing up in Perth, I would cover your shit probably 3 or 4 times a week. You know, play."
Superman or whatever.
Kryptonite.
Kryptonite. Yeah, right.
Great song, by the way.
Yeah.
And Here Without You, is that Three Doors Down? It's one of those bands. But anyway.
Third Eye Blind. That's what I keep confusing them with. Yeah.
Right. It's the three words. And
three words.
Three and three. Right.
Yeah.
So and he said that's really funny because I grew up in wherever he grew up and I was covering Filter 3 times a week, you know.
Oh, that's crazy.
We laughed and had a beer and had a hug about it.
That's awesome.
But I mean, the point I'm now going to get to the point after 15 minutes. You do all these things and then you've done them,
right?
You know, and then you're back to waking up, you know, going for a hike, having a coffee, going to the studio, or I'm talking personally, or it could be waking up and going to a restaurant or nothing changes.
You do all that shit and you're still waiting 15 minutes for the coffee to be brewed while you sit there on the couch.
And you're still feeding your cat, and you're still, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't change a thing. And whatever you think, let me give you the Jim Carrey example again. You can check it out on YouTube. There's Jim Carrey interview Oscars, and I'm going to try and paraphrase him, but he's got this Oscar in his hand, and he's like, you know, when you think if I could just get one of these Oscars, you know, have you seen this?
No, I haven't seen this one. No.
Okay. Well, he's the parallel is
what
very
film
similar.
was it for?
I can't remember what film he got it for, but you know, it's not the old slick shaved Jim Carrey. This is the current. I've got a beard. I'm very conscious, very spiritual.
Yeah.
Don't give a fuck what anyone thinks.
The enlightened Jim Carrey.
The enlightened Jim Carrey, and in a way, his character is very inspirational to myself. But what he's saying is, you know, you know, back in the day, you think if I could just get one of these, then everything. If I could get my first Oscar, and then you get your first one, then you've got, well, if I could just get 2 of these,
right?
You know, and he's like, then you get 2 of them, and you're thinking, well, if I could. I think I've made my point.
Well, the glass is never full.
The glass is never, ever, ever full.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's, I think the thing to realize is that, I think the positive thing to take away from it is that if you think you're chasing something and you're having trouble and you're not achieving fame or not that fame should ever be a goal, for any profession.
Or necessarily even equate success.
I think the word success is very
that's a very malleable term. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. What is success? How do you define success? Is success something? I mean, it's unfortunate that because we live in a society that.
Well, I think you can define success however you want it to. We live in a society that certainly propagates it in a very certain manner.
Well, I think achievement is achievement shouldn't even that shouldn't even be a measurable term. I think
it's measurable to your own individual self.
It is, but we're in a society that values
keeping up with the Kardashians as success.
Keeping up it values the amount of followers as opposed to the quality of your content,
right?
And I think that's a huge. I think I've seen one episode of the Kardashians ever, and I think that was probably enough.
I've never even seen a full episode ever.
And I'm not bagging them. I'm not saying they're bad people or
no. It's what it represents culturally.
Which is very, very fucking sad. You know what I mean? Because you wind the clock back 200 years and Goethe's writing The Sorrows of Young Werther and that's a bestseller in the 1800s. That's what people are reading. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, people are having dinner and then gathering together to play piano and then discuss Schopenhauer. Do you know what I mean? They're not sitting there in front of a fucking box watching an hour of reality TV, or like my fucking shithead neighbors below me, 7 hours or whatever the fuck they do.
And then wishing their lives were like that.
I mean, and I only call them that because the minute I decide to start playing guitar for even 3 minutes, they'll start banging on the ceiling to get me to shut up.
And you should clarify, you're not like ripping through a full stack here.
Which I'm almost at the stage where I'm just about to give them the finger. You want to complain about something?
Yeah, let me give you something fucking
here's a little,
about.
This is Eruption by, Eddie.
Can you still play that?
I mean, yeah, sure.
Oh, fuck yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, I'll do it in my own way, just like anyone.
Yeah.
But back to this whole success thing. It's not unfortunately, it's not content that it does in the more esoteric circles, but it's not content that necessarily drives industry and society. It's influence, and the people that are being allowed to have the influence are selected not on the basis of the
content.
The content or the what's the word I'm looking for? The what the hell is that word? The conviction of their artistry.
Sure.
It's to do with their spread and their likability, and often the two and two don't go together. The guys that are really, really creative are often fucking socially inept.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
and
totally.
socially awkward. I'm probably one of them.
You're not that socially awkward.
Well, so I just finished this book by this guy. It's called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse.
Oh yeah, of course.
Have you read that book?
Sure.
It's beautiful, right?
Years and years ago. It was one of my favorite books, though.
It's really okay. Anyone that's listening, it's 120 pages. It's very, very easy read. You can read it in 1 or 2 days, and there's a lot of great lessons. I think that's another chat by itself. But this guy Hermann Hesse, he in the early 1900s, he just basically secluded, he reclused, and all he did is write and write. And he did this for a few years, and then he found that when he came out of it, he was very found it very difficult to socialize and felt very awkward and whatnot. And I was reading this about him. I thought, holy fucking shit. I remember, wind the clock back 5 or 10 years. I always worked jobs where I was having to deal with people all day, and I guess I was a very, very social person. I was pretty good at what I did as well. I worked for a long time in the housing industry. So I was doing designs and doing appointments all day, every day. And just that constant interaction with people, it begets more interaction and more openness and more comfort. And basically, you become an improviser and a weaver in your own musical self in terms of conversation. I mean, what's improvisation if it's not what we're doing right now?
No, of course.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'd argue also, because I know this only from my own personal experience, but when you travel and you're constantly surrounded by people you don't know
every day,
that really socially, I find, increases your comfortability having a point blank conversation with anybody, but also your emotional intelligence as far as how you read people, how you read their emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, traveling, I think that's another huge whole concept in itself of mind expanding and
totally,
cultural recognition and development of the self, for lack of a better sentence.
Totally. Did you ever read, I thought of this when you're talking about Siddhartha. Have you read The Alchemist?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay.
New Year's Day, 2012, whatever it was, on the beach in a place called Lange in Western Australia. Sat on the beach, read the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like that would have been up your alley.
Great book.
What else are you reading?
At the moment, I'm reading Constellations of Philosophy by Alain de Botton.
Okay.
And I'm also reading, you're going to laugh, it's a book by Robert Greene, the guy that wrote
Art of Power, Art of Seduction.
48, I don't know.
48 Laws of Power, then he wrote The Art of Seduction. I know, Robert. I have some of his stuff.
Right. So I've not read those, but I was at a bar watching a friend, my really good friend, Sam Trocky, do a comedy routine at what's that place called on Sunset?
Comedy Cellar? Or no, that's New York.
Not the Sunset Lounge. It's on the. I forget the fucking name.
I know.
But there was a guy at the bar and like, hey, what are you reading? Because he had this book and there was these fucking post-it notes flying out of it and whatnot. It was all tattered. And he's like, have a look. I said, all right, I'll have a look. So I opened it up and it was almost religious the way that he'd fucking gone to town, written notes and arrows and highlighted shit.
Yeah, that's intense.
And I mean, this guy, he's black dude. He looked like a rapper or some kind of artist himself. You know, he looked pretty serious. And I thought, okay. So I checked it out, and whatever pages I opened to, I thought were fantastic. So it's I should tell you the name of the book. It's called The 50th Law.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah,
right. It's 50 Cent and Robert Greene.
Yeah, because 50 Cent got really into the 48 Laws of Power.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I bought the book. You know, it's
a lot of like the hip hop communities embrace that book.
Well, I think they should. I'm not necessarily just the hip hop community. I think it's okay. I haven't read the whole book, so I can't be quoted on it. But the chapters I've just opened to blindly have been very, very great. And the first page I opened to, I think this is worth the book alone. It was about mastery, and respecting the process.
Sure.
And you know, you can jump on YouTube and if you're interested in piano, they'll find a way. There's some algorithm that's going to fucking find you and throw some ad about. Do you like piano? Do you want to, and here's the worst one is, do you want to impress your friends and wow people and all this shit, which is the last fucking reason you should be playing music anyway.
Right, but it's the most enticing.
It's so cheesy and I hate it, and I have a lot of things to say about it. I'm not going to go down that path.
Yeah, but everyone's looking for social proof in some way. So you see that and like, yes, of course I do. So it works. That's marketing.
It's unfortunate, and I think that mentality is a product of our society that preys on fear and tries to scare you into things to get you to purchase other things that will make you apparently less scared, but probably won't alleviate anything. It's just a constant fucking cycle of bullshit. But all of these things tend to be geared towards here's a quick fix. Here's a quick road to this. Learn the piano in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Learn in just all this fucking bullshit. Nobody learned how to play Rachmaninoff in 15 minutes.
No.
You have to sit there for however
20 years.
I mean, well, whatever it is. It might be 8 hours a day, it might be 10 hours a day, it might be 2 hours a day. I don't know what the fuck it is, but you have to delve into whatever you are loving, and not for any other reason than that. And this chapter in the 50th Law was respecting the process. Mm-hmm. You have to respect the process. You got to put time in. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, you're a great guitar player. You spent so much time doing that. Now you've got a piano in the room next door, and you're waking up and you're playing piano every day. And it's a process. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Maybe you can't play Chopin right now, you know, but maybe
if it's in C minor, I can.
No, that shit backwards.
In and out.
But it sounds obvious, but it's about, you know, it pertains to another quote. I'm sorry, I can't paraphrase the guy that said the quote, but whatever you want to get really great at, whatever you want to get good at. I have a book of quotes that I just write stuff down. Make that the first thing you do every day when you wake up.
Really? You wake up, I like that.
Yeah. If it could be, let's say I want to get better at chin-ups or calisthenics. I've been really into calisthenics lately. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. There's many, many reasons why I do that as my first daily routine. But I think it's really great to exercise the first thing in the morning and get that out of the way. It gives me a better mind state for the rest of the day. But,
Sure.
you know, it could be anything, but what it comes down to is putting the work in, and there's no shortcut. Don't spend your time searching on fucking YouTube for a 15-minute fix. Put the work in. Just set aside an hour, or even if it's half an hour. Do that every day. Respect the fucking process. There's no shortcut. Sitting on Instagram scrolling through bullshit is not going to help you get there.
Have you read The War of Art?
I've seen that. No. Tell me about it.
I'm just going to give you a copy because I've got an extra one.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of those, like...
I'll buy you beer.
Deal. That's one of those books for any creative and, you know, working on a regular basis, just when you're feeling that resistance telling you that you can't finish something or you're not good enough or whatever insecurity that we all go through when we're doing it.
Sure.
It's just it's a 120-page manual of just getting you out of your own head and out of your own way.
Well, I think that's a battle, isn't it? And arguably there's a lot of guys that have the tools and the knowledge, but it's the mental game that is what's going to get you.
They can never get
to
out
the
of their
finish
own way.
line. Yeah.
That is.
Well, this guy, Alan de Botton, I was telling you, I was reading his book. He has a great YouTube channel called The School of Life.
Yeah.
And there's a great, it's a website and a YouTube channel. There's a segment on there about procrastination and why do we procrastinate? I mean, I don't know about you, but I procrastinate sometimes, and I tend to not procrastinate nearly as much as maybe I did, 5 or 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. But procrastination, here's a paradox for you. It has its roots in fear.
Because it's fear of success and fear of failure at the same time.
I don't know. Well, I never heard of the fear of success, but it's a fear of failure for sure. I'm going to do this and it's not going to be good enough, so I'm just going to sit here and.
Fear of success is scary because it changes your life. That's what's scary about it. And it's easy to be comfortable in your life. Even when things are going wrong, the devil you know is easier than the devil you don't. Fear of success is a very real thing, and it's very fascinating.
Wow.
And therein lies the paradox. And then, it's almost, you're like a deer in headlights, theoretically, if you're terrified of failing, but you're terrified of winning or succeeding. So, may as well watch TV.
Right, because it's an easy escape. You don't
same.
have to deal with.
Right.
Yeah, I'd never even thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's a trip, man.
Wow. I'm going to ponder on that for a second.
Yeah, no, it's...
Yeah, it's... Well, I think that's why a lot of people don't... I can definitely... once I digested that concept, I looked at my own life, people that were close to me and understood. Because there's people that I know with great talent, even family members.
Totally.
And it's not necessarily musical, but it is certainly in other ways. I have a cousin who's wonderful in literature, another family member who's an amazing painter, and I'm thinking, shit, if I had even just an ounce of that talent, I would try and exploit the shit out of that. And I've thought for years, and this is over a decade, thinking, why the fuck don't you do something with that? I'm doing everything I can with whatever musical gift that I have.
Right.
Get into that, and it's got to be rooted in fear. I would always think, well, you're just obviously fucking lazy, but it doesn't come down to lazy, because these people that I'm speaking about are very, very hard workers that work 80 hours a week. And, one of them is my brother. He's got a house and he's paid it off. There's not many people his age that have done that.
Right.
And who also has an amazing gift for art. And I'm thinking, what? Fuck, man, do something with, like, I can't understand.
Art is personal.
I'm learning, I'm spending my evenings learning how to paint and draw better. Yeah, I've really got the bug for that. I find it an absolutely beautiful and therapeutic thing, even just to watch someone and learn the techniques of how they oil paint. You know, I think that's such an amazing, beautiful gift that they have. This is one Australian guy, Lange or someone like that. I've been watching a lot of his stuff. But getting back to what I was saying, I think it's just fear, you know, fear of what I could become, or fear of it not doing. I think it's definitely a two-way thing, and it makes me sad to think about it, because it's how do you get rid of that fear? You know what I mean? I'm sure for me, I had a really comfortable job in Australia. I was earning tons of money. I'd built a few houses for myself, and it set me up to be able to come over here. But there was a lot of uncertainty. But I have to say, for myself, there was never an ounce of should I do it or not, or is it gonna work or whatnot. You
just did it.
Just had to do it, and I was fortunate in the sense that I had some money to sit on while I sat around and did fuck all and waited for the phone to ring.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which took about 6 months.
Really?
Just for anyone that's going to move to LA, FYI. And it might take a year or it might take longer, but for me it was a 6 month
When you moved
period.
out here, did you have any network set up, or you kind of just came out here cold turkey?
I was working with this lady, Vicky Hamilton. She used to manage Guns N' Roses, and she introduced me to a couple of people, and one of them was this lady, Gail Perry, who used to manage Filter back in the day. She's an attorney. She's also like a surrogate mother / auntie / best friend that I have out here that I'm very grateful for. But she introduced me to Richard Patrick, and it was at a BMG Christmas party that she took me to, and it was literally the sentence of, "Hey, this kid's really talented. You should work with him." And Richard's, "Hey, I'm Richard," and he's, you know, Richard's very nice. And what's your name? You know, what are you doing? I think more than anything, we just really got along. You know, we talked for 10 minutes and exchanged numbers, and that, in short, is the start of my saga with Filter. Simple as that. It was, and I remember it was, we were either going to turn left to go to it was a huge party at the Chrysalis building on Wilshire, where the fuck it is. It was, we were going to take a left to go to this photo booth, and there was way too many people. And I said, "Gail, fuck this. Let's go the other way. There's too many people." And went the other way and ran into Richard. You know, if we'd not gone that way, I don't know, what would I be doing right now? I'd be doing something else.
Right.
But it's part of it's a lottery, but before you get to the lottery stage, there's a lot more you can do to prepare yourself to make sure you got the fucking skills and the goods to thrive in what is essentially an animal kingdom. And
have you seen the Hired Gun documentary?
yes, I have.
Okay. I remember being in the Crustal Method studio when he was working on that a couple of years ago, and because Scott scored it.
He did.
Yeah, because I used to live right around the corner from the Crustal
In
Method
North Hollywood,
studio. I was like 2 blocks away from there.
Sure.
So I was going in there in and out for a bit, and he was just finishing up that score at the time. So I remember, you know, hearing some of the cues and seeing some of that, and hearing about Richard also, because Richard's in the film, of course.
He is.
And I only actually watched it in full just a week, 2 weeks ago. It showed up on Netflix, and I kind of forgot about the thing. And then I saw it, I'm like, oh, there's Scott's movie. I should watch it. And I really enjoyed it.
Sure.
The stuff about Billy Joel was heartbreaking.
I thought it was very, very sad.
It was very sad.
It was terrible, especially because everybody from that camp just seemed like the greatest crew, right? It was heartbreaking to hear, especially the guitar player that.
Yeah, the guitar player, but even the drummer, you know, after 30 years.
Liberty. Right.
Liberty just. They don't fire him, they just stop calling.
Sure. Which tends to be the way that it goes.
Right, which is crazy. You'd think after a 30-year relationship with somebody, they'd have the decency to talk to you.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much Billy Joel's earning per show, but, you know, Liberty's now what is he doing? I don't know. I hope he's doing great things, but is he?
He's teaching. It looked like it was like high school or musical outreach. Yeah,
teaching drums. The guy should be living in the hills somewhere after everything he's done and what he's contributed to that legacy.
Sure.
And I think the fact that he's not compensated for it is a gross abuse of ego on BJ's part.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I agree.
Just from the stuff that I've seen in the video, and that may be a product of mental health. It could be a product of
I think it was
influence, because if you see him in the earlier interviews that he was doing,
he's
much
like, more humble.
Got to use my band. Got to use my band. Got to use my band. And I was rooting for the guy. I'm like, fuck yeah,
I think it was
you
a product
are the man.
of like ridiculous success,
but
and I think it went to his head.
Yeah, I mean,
that's all gone, unfortunately.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Yeah, that's why we have to go to the bar after this. Okay. The beer's gone.
Well, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is unfortunate because you have to remain humble. I would hope that you would remain humble and realize the reasons that you got to the place that you were, and it was.
I think everyone handles it differently too, because in a way it's a traumatic event when that happens to you, and everyone also responds to trauma differently.
Sure. Yes.
So some people are going to become more withdrawn.
Yeah.
And, you and I have both seen that plenty of times. And then you have other people who just eat it all in and their head balloons.
Yeah. I mean, getting back to the whole philosophy thing and whatnot, we're not taught how to deal with life and circumstances. We learn where Madagascar is on the map, but we don't learn what to do during a breakup, or we don't learn how to deal with grief or any of those things.
No.
I didn't at high school. Maybe some of the Montessori schools here are doing it, and I hope they are.
No, I think you have to figure that one out on your own, basically.
Well, but do we have to? I mean, there's resources that have been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years that help us with this stuff. Why are we not learning this from an earlier age? Is it because we're not equipped to deal with the emotion of learning that? I don't know. But I wished, sure, by the age of 17 or 18, I went through things that would have benefited from teachings of, Nietzsche or,
sure.
Aristotle, or just insert philosopher here, or great thinker.
I got into Camus in high school.
Into?
Albert Camus.
Oh, yes.
French philosopher.
Sure.
And
He's
I got
on
into Nietzsche at the time also.
Right. Okay.
But in the past year, I got back into the existentialist authors. And I went down like a Sartre wormhole.
As you do.
As you do.
Sure. But I think just to round it up, we've digressed in 8 million directions, which is...
That's the beauty of it.
Which is... Sure. I think one of the main things that I want to convey is that, being from the kid, with Lear on his shoulders going, I'm going to do that at fucking 18 and whatnot, and then fast forwarding and then having done a lot of those things that you aspired to, and then still coming back and dealing with yourself. You've got to find meaning in things that are beyond any sort of egoical fantasy of any sort of experience.
Sure.
It's and for me, it's I think the solace is in, no matter who's hearing what you're doing or anything that you are doing, at the end of the day, if you are a musician, well, that's probably why you're listening to this in the first place. But if you are a musician and you could be a bedroom producer, or you could be someone who's playing in front of 80,000 people a night, it doesn't matter. What is the reward is the process of what you're doing. It's the process of creation.
Yep.
And it's the event of sending in your master or mastering yourself and printing and sitting back and having a beer and it's 4 a.m. and it might be you by yourself, or it might be you and a mate, it might be you and me, Matt.
Right.
And just listening back and going, fuck yeah.
That's fucking good.
That's fucking cool. I'm stoked with this. Sign off, and I'm going to put that out.
Yeah.
That is the experience. That is the journey. And who cares what happens afterwards? Okay, if you're trying to make a career of it, there's 1,000 things you can do to try and promote it, and you might have a label behind you. And all. None of that matters. None of that is relevant. It doesn't matter if 60,000 people listen to it, or 600,000 people, or in my friend's case, Neil, 800 million.
Right.
What's that song? Say You Won't Let Go.
Is it that many now?
I think it's more than 800 million.
That's
you know
insane.
what I mean? Whatever the Spotify count is.
Right.
Or it might be just you and me. It might be 2 people. The process didn't change for why you did it. And that's another question in itself. Why did you do it? Shouldn't be for fame or any kind of outward gain. Make the music that you want to hear.
Well, it's just be for the love of doing
Make
it.
them for the love of doing it. And
it's the
for
idealistic purity of it that is often missed.
Well, I agree, and and there's so many thousands of reasons why you can make music. Oh, I've got to sync it. I've got to do this. I've got to fucking do that. Blah blah blah. I've done okay in the sync world. You know what I mean? I was at New Year's Day. We went to see The Last Jedi, and it was my friend Anthony, and he we sat down. He had this big thing of popcorn. It's me, him, and his Mrs. Renee, and he asked me, he's like, have you ever sat down and heard any of your music through the just on a trailer or whatever? I'm like, friends have told me, but I've never actually been there and experienced it. And literally 30 seconds later, the trailer for 1517 to Paris starts, and I was like, hey, I know this track, and I didn't realize, but I was like, hang on a fucking minute.
It's me.
This is fucking my music. Do you know what I mean? And there was the first time that actually happened sitting in the theater.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which was great. And I'll tell you exactly what the piece of music, if you guys want to check out the trailer to 1517 in Paris, or even better, the behind the scenes with Clint Eastwood has more of the actual piece in it. I just finished watching a Game of Thrones episode for season 6. It was where, if anyone's into, are you into Game of Thrones? Oh, we've talked about this, haven't we?
I watched it up to the last season, and then I stopped caring, and then I didn't watch the last season, and I just don't care.
Okay, so for the people that do care, it was
not me.
Well, it was really. I think the emotion, at least, Matt, you can appreciate. It was a period where Arya had tried everything, and she finally sailed to this isle, and she thought she was going to get some help, and she just got fucking shat on again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I felt such empathy and grief for the character. It was debilitating, which I think is a great compliment to the filmmaker.
And the writing.
And the writing. I'm not into a lot of shows. I love Black Mirror. I think that's very important for today, for today's society. But anyway, I remember watching it. I was living at my friend John's place in Van Nuys at the time. Had my studio set up there, and I went away and I wrote this one piece, and I wrote it from start to finish in about an hour. And consequently, I got a real guy to play cello on it. It's literally for 3 cellos and 2 violas. That's all it is, and a contrabass.
Nice.
It's not something that I spent days and days on. I just did it and whatnot, and then submit it, and that's where it turns up. Do you know what I mean? It's a world where you can do that, but it was inspired music, and it was inspired from a not necessarily real experience, because Game of Thrones is obviously a fictional story, but it was a real emotion that I felt. I really felt the grief of that character. Whichever way you want to take that, it doesn't matter. It could be grief from the character, the film, could be your breakup, it could be Do you know, let yourself feel that. Don't be scared to let it take you over. And then how am I going to express that? How am I going to put that into my DAW or my guitar or my fucking violin? Or
how do I express this?
How do I interpret this into something that makes me deal with it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know sync is a great way to make a living. And
sure.
I mean, whatever kind of inspiration you can use to help, because I think half the battle is getting out of your head and getting out of the state of expectation and you know, media and all these things that people think that you should be doing or telling you that you should be doing, and really sort of delving in and finding what do I want to hear? Do you know what I mean? And if you can make the music that you want to hear, I don't think any of the other things really matter. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you're doing it for a living, maybe they are, but music for a living shouldn't be the sole goal, because you lose yourself in the process.
Well, and you should live for the music.
You should live for the music. You shouldn't.
Not the other way around.
You shouldn't. Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
That sounds
not
cheesy almost.
It's not cheesy. It's totally to the T for anyone that's doing it like we are, or anyone that's trying to. I mean, I wish I'd known a lot of this stuff, or maybe I don't wish. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have taken the same path, but. You know, and it ties into the whole thing, but being the kid and wanting to do all this stuff, and then playing all the big stages, and then touring the world, and, you know, putting out record with the platinum.
Yeah, you get that cake you've been searching for, and you realize you want the same shit.
Not even. You get the cake, and then you. It's not about that cake.
That's what I mean.
It's about a different kind of cake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's about a cake that you can continuously keep cutting slices from, and that's your own cake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it grows back.
Yeah, it grows back, and you can bake another one whenever you want.
Yeah.
But you keep taking from that cake of your own musicality and your own journey, and just create for yourself, man. You know, don't worry about anyone else. Don't worry about trying to create a hit or whatever the fuck's out there right now, or, you know, don't worry about having a drop because every other song has a fucking drop in it. Have a song without a drop because everyone's having a drop in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and if there's a third chorus after a bridge, I've just did it. I'm going to make a fucking song without anything after bridge and have a completely different tangent that tells that there's no rules, and some asshole behind a desk is going to tell you that it needs a third chorus and whatnot, and the best thing you can do is give them the fucking finger and make the music that you want to make.